You never expect your life to change on an ordinary day, but it's often those quiet, routine moments that end up shaking everything. That's what happened to me. I married my childhood sweetheart, Ellie, right after college. I became a junior school teacher. She worked as a nurse at a private hospital. Life seemed solid, decent pay, a cozy home thanks to an easy mortgage, and eventually two kids. James, now 14, and Elaine, now 19. They were thriving. Good grades, tight-knit friendships, the usual sibling squabbles that Ellie and I found more amusing than annoying. Our marriage was steady, though not overly romantic. Most of our arguments revolved around parenting, and Ellie had a quiet way of ending disagreements by simply changing the subject. It became our unspoken routine. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. I was in the staff lounge at the middle school grabbing a rare peaceful lunch when Pat Collins, the head of the science department, approached me. We'd been friends for years. "Hey, Al, got a favor to ask," he said. "My top 12th graders are testing some new DNA equipment from the university. We need anonymous samples to avoid ethical issues, can't use students or staff." He explained the test. Two kids, one biologically related to a parent and one not. The students would have to figure out who's who based on DNA. Simple hair samples would do. I agreed, not mentioning I already had the perfect setup in mind. That night, with Ellie working late and Elaine studying with her friend Patsy, whom we'd known since college, I got to work. I gathered a strand of my hair, plucked one from James's pillow, snagged one from Elaine's comb, and, thanks to an accidental tangle with a dining chair, grabbed some of Patsy's hair too. I even tossed in a strand from Ellie, just out of curiosity. I labeled the 6 samples meticulously and handed them to Pat the next day. A week passed before Pat returned, beaming. The university mentors were blown away, the students nailed the test, and the 5 samples made it even more of a challenge. Here's the final report. I waited until I was home to open it. The DNA analysis results were crystal clear. I wasn't biologically related to any of the samples. Ellie, on the other hand, was confirmed as the biological parent of both James and Elaine. Surprisingly, Patsy also shared DNA markers with both kids. Ellie wasn't related to Patsy, but Patsy was related to my children. I read the conclusion twice, then a third time. Suddenly, all those quiet days didn't feel so quiet anymore. It didn't hit me all at once. It crept in as I reread the DNA report, my hands trembling, breath tight. I wasn't the biological father of Elaine or James. Ellie was, but I wasn't. And somehow Patsy, Elaine's childhood friend, was genetically connected to both of them. The truth was brutal. I'd been lied to for my entire marriage. I staggered back, numb. "No! Ellie, no!" I shouted into an empty house. My legs gave out and I hit the kitchen floor. Next thing I knew, Elaine was shaking me. "Dad, are you okay?" "Yeah, I think I just blacked out." My head throbbed, and when I touched the back of my scalp, my hand came away bloody. Elaine rushed to get ice and tissues. Her care was instinctive, loving. She looked at me like any daughter would, and that hurt more than the fall. Because now I knew she wasn't my daughter, not biologically. But I'd raised her, loved her, stood by her every day of her life. That didn't just disappear. Still, the betrayal was sharp. I felt like a stranger in my own home. Later, Elaine came downstairs with a cup of coffee. "You really scared me, Daddy," she said, handing over the crumpled report I had dropped. She had no idea what it meant, thank God. "Thanks, Lainey," I muttered, using the nickname I'd always called her. She smiled and left me alone, and I collapsed into the armchair. My mind spiraled. Ellie had cheated, at least twice. With John Jefferson, most likely, Patsy's father. But who knew how many more there had been? How long had it gone on? Was it still happening? We were the couple everyone admired. Stable, loving, rarely argued. But maybe that was all surface. I sat in silence, whispering how, over and over, until I didn't even notice Elaine return with a fresh towel and another comment about the report. She thought I'd simply slipped. When James and Ellie got home, I managed to hold it together. James made jokes about my age and my injury, then disappeared upstairs. Ellie checked the wound and went to get fresh ice. I flinched when she touched me, not from pain, but from the weight of what I now knew. "Don't be such a baby," she teased. "Dinner's ready soon." She laughed. I didn't. I ate in silence, pretending to be tired from the fall. Everyone bought it. Later, I went to bed early, lying awake, my thoughts running in circles. I had to get space. I needed time to think. The next morning, I asked the assistant principal for a week off. "You okay, Al?" she asked, sensing something was wrong. "Just need a break. Some personal things I need to work through," I said quietly. She nodded. I trust you. Take care of yourself. Over the weekend, I kept busy with yard work. Anything to stay away from Ellie. Meal times were the worst. Pretending everything was normal, smiling through the pain. I couldn't even meet her eyes. And she didn't press. If anything, she seemed relieved. Maybe that's what broke me the most. Monday felt like any other day, on the surface. But while the rest of the family went about their routines, I had a mission. With the house to myself and time to think, I decided to find answers. I needed the truth about Ellie, about John, and about everything they were hiding. I made a plan. Search Ellie's things for clues, keep tabs on her work schedule, install a tracker on her car, watch John's movements, consult a lawyer. Step 1 was easy. I scoured the house, closets, drawers, the attic, but found nothing suspicious, except one thing, a photo album out of place, dustless like it had been handled often. Curious, I opened it. It wasn't just an album, it was a tribute to John Jefferson. University pictures of him and Ellie, some alarmingly intimate, then photos of John holding baby Elaine. One image nearly broke me. The three of them in a hospital room, right after Elaine was born, smiling like a family. There were more, including similar ones with James. Most were taken at the hospital, with Ellie in her nurse's uniform, or worse, in revealing gowns she'd never worn for me. These weren't shared memories. These were secrets, captured in snapshots. Rage and heartbreak swirled together. Every stolen glance John had ever given me suddenly made sense. I imagined him smirking, thinking, this clueless guy's raising my kids. That album tore through everything I believed about love, family, and trust. I scanned the entire thing and saved it on my computer, locked and labeled. Next up, surveillance. I knew Ellie took her lunch break at noon. Around 11, I parked near the hospital with my camera and a telephoto lens. 5 minutes before noon, John strolled into the hospital like he owned the place. Then, right on time, Ellie emerged, holding his hand. My heart slammed against my ribs. I lifted the camera. Click, click. They walked to Ellie's car, kissed, and drove off. I followed at a distance, careful not to be seen. They pulled into a modest hotel just minutes away, one known for short stays, mostly by hospital visitors. From the lobby, I casually chatted up the receptionist. I joked about how rushed the last couple seemed. Oh, them? She smiled. They're regulars. Rent a room 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Been doing it for years. Even came when she was pregnant. Isn't it sweet when long married couples keep the spark alive? The words hit like a punch to the gut. Long married? To me, I wanted to scream. I forced a smile, mumbled something about booking rooms for corporate reps, and left before I lost control. An hour later, they returned to the car, laughing, eating takeout sandwiches like it was just another day. But my camera had caught it all. The walks, the smiles, the kiss. And this time, I saw it clearly. The joy on Ellie's face. Not for me. For him. I sat, frozen in the hotel parking lot, seething. All I could do was keep myself from storming out and confronting the two of them. That's how I saw them now. Liars, betrayers. They drove off, completely unaware, while the receptionist, likely on her lunch break, waved and walked over, asking if I had more questions about their services. I smiled politely, said no, and left. Back home, I uploaded the photos and moved on to the next task, still Monday. I found a discreet GPS tracker online and saw a nearby store had it in stock. By 3:30 p.m., I was home with the device and a manual. $200 well spent. I was pretending to work at the table when Elaine burst in, teasing me about staying upright today. After lunch, the usual rhythm resumed. James came in around 4, Ellie showered, and I started dinner. By 6:30, the whole family sat around the table, chatting like any normal evening. Ellie looked unbothered, relaxed even, as if the afternoon rendezvous was just another item on her to-do list. That night, I went to bed early, faking exhaustion from a rough day at school. They didn't question it. I often had days like that. I hardly slept. At dawn, I installed the tracker in Ellie's car and set up the app on my laptop. With that done, I made breakfast and prepped for the day like usual. By 9 a.m., I was alone again and ready to finish the list. The tracker would confirm what I already knew. I didn't need to follow John anymore. That left one final step: legal advice. A quick search turned up a local divorce attorney with an open slot at 11. I booked it and arrived early, waiting quietly in the reception area. At 11:15, I was called into an old-fashioned office filled with wood, leather, books, and the weight of quiet authority. The attorney, Jane Lober, greeted me and invited me to tell my story. I started slowly. Then, the words came pouring out. Somewhere between the hotel, the photos, and the DNA results, I realized I was crying. She listened quietly, handed me tissues, and made notes. Once I finished, she asked calmly if I had proof. I listed the photos, but left out the tracker, assuming it might cross a legal line. Jane explained the situation bluntly. I could sue John for child support and possibly alienation of affection, though that might be harder to prove. Divorce, she said, was the likely outcome. Infidelity wasn't illegal and wouldn't impact the division of assets unless coercion could be shown. Since both Ellie and I worked, there would be no alimony. Elaine, being an adult, was irrelevant to the process, but custody of James could affect asset division, particularly the home. Then she asked if I was sure. I paused, remembering everything. The DNA, the photos, the lies. Then I nodded. I was sure. Jane said she'd have the paperwork ready by Thursday. She told me to send financial records to her office and reminded me not to do anything rash or illegal. I was out the door before I knew it, surrounded by other people waiting, each facing their own crisis. But I felt isolated, utterly alone. Who could I even talk to? Ellie, who'd once been my rock, had betrayed me. I couldn't burden Elaine or James. Telling them would shatter their world. And Patsy's family, how could I possibly tell Shelley what John and Ellie had been doing? Doubt started creeping in. Could I really tear all these lives apart? If I did nothing, I'd be the only one hurt. Was that easier to live with? Back home, I sat in my room, weighing everything. Act or stay silent. I smirked darkly at the Shakespearean dilemma. To be or not to be. I needed a drink. I poured a glass of red wine. I hated drinking alone, but somehow it felt necessary. It dulled the ache, if only a little. I stopped at one glass, knowing this wasn't the path I wanted to go down. 2 hours later, around 3 p.m., I had my answer. I cleaned up, ate a quiet dinner, and waited for the evening routine. Ellie arrived home cheerfully, heading straight for a shower. James followed. Then her voice called out, half annoyed, telling James not to leave his school bag in her car. And just like that, the mask was back on. Life pretending to be normal. Of course. Ellie always showered the moment she got home, claiming it was to avoid spreading hospital germs. Now I knew it was just to wash away the evidence of her betrayal. And the name James, used at the hotel, was John's alias. Those details only steeled my resolve. The next morning I rose early, removed the GPS tracker from Ellie's car, and disabled the ignition. Her pattern had been consistent, and I didn't need more proof. By the time I was back in the kitchen making breakfast, everything was in place. Ellie called out for James to hurry, panicked about getting to work on time. They tried starting the car. Nothing. She asked me to take a look. I took my time, fiddled under the hood, and shrugged. No fix. I told her I had an early meeting and couldn't drive them. They were stuck with the bus. Ellie, irritated but silent, had no choice but to go. James complained the entire way. Riding the bus was a social death sentence for a teenager. I didn't care. I knew their usual detour to the hotel wasn't happening today. After seeing Elaine off, I got ready for a meeting of my own. At 9:30, Shelley looked genuinely surprised to see me at her door. She joked about me skipping work and invited me in, confused but gracious. We sat in her backyard, sipping coffee before I told her the truth. I explained everything, Ellie and John, the photos, the DNA. Shelley listened in growing silence, then broke down, retreating into the house. When she returned, it wasn't with tissues. It was with 2 bottles of wine and a pair of large glasses. Coffee was forgotten. We drank quietly at first, then she asked me to repeat it all. I did. She swore she'd be filing for divorce that day. Her friend from high school, a divorce attorney, had an opening that afternoon. She asked if I could share my evidence. Then came the real question. Why had I come to her first instead of confronting Ellie? I told her the truth. I didn't want to devastate her and Patsy by going after John without warning. She deserved a chance to protect herself and get what she was owed. Shelley nodded, eyes red. She couldn't believe what they'd done to us, or for how long. She hugged me tightly. We both cried. It was the first moment of true human comfort I'd felt since everything unraveled. Eventually, we composed ourselves. Shelley said she'd talk to Patsy, give her the truth, but not everything. She'd keep Ellie's involvement quiet, at least for now, to avoid jeopardizing our plans. It would still be enough to shake John and make him sweat. I left Shelley's house with a clearer mind and a plan. She would strike first, secure what was hers, while keeping Ellie's name out of it. That gave me time to prepare my own next step. Shelley's lawyer would help her handle it smartly, and I could move forward, not just in revenge, but in control. The following morning, John was served with divorce papers at work, loudly and with zero discretion. Right before a staff meeting, a court officer entered and, with a voice that cut through the room, called out his name. After officially handing over the summons, he added with a smirk, "Your wife refuses to stay with a man who fathered 2 kids with another man's wife." Chaos erupted. Gasps, whispers, stunned silence. The server left quickly, his job done, and his little performance likely earned him a decent bonus, though he'd probably be blacklisted for that dramatic exit. From that moment, John became a pariah. Colleagues who once laughed with him now avoided eye contact. No one sat near him. Conversation stopped when he entered the room. Even his boss, a man married for over 4 decades, called him in to question his character and judgment. He told John bluntly that once the divorce went through, he'd be let go. With just 2 months left on the clock and gossip flying everywhere, John's chances of finding new work were slim. Back at the Webb household, things were shifting too. Strangely, Ellie's car seemed to be taking an eternity to fix. The mechanic kept coming up with vague excuses every week. Something technical, nothing concrete. This forced Ellie to rely on public transit and significantly limited her freedom. With no car, her private lunchtime meetings with John were becoming tense and increasingly risky. Since they could no longer meet at their usual hotel, the receptionist called John about missed reservations and eventually canceled their regular slot. They had to resort to sneaking around at the hospital. Supply closets became their hideouts. Cramped, smelly, and risky, these storerooms offered little privacy and constant threat of interruption. And sure enough, one day it happened. A contract worker accidentally walked in on them. Shocked, he backed out, only to reopen the door seconds later, this time with his phone camera recording. The video was short, but enough. They scrambled out, humiliated, never to return to that spot. Unfortunately for them, that video didn't stay private for long. The worker recognized a nurse, who passed it along to another, and soon it spread through the hospital like wildfire. Strangely, neither John nor Ellie received it, but I did. I quietly filed the clip into my growing cheaters folder. Despite the storm beneath the surface, I stayed composed at home. Years of routine helped me fake normalcy easily, but behind closed doors, Ellie and I shared nothing. No intimacy, no conversation beyond the superficial. She didn't even acknowledge the emotional distance, her mind clearly preoccupied with what was happening to John and Shelley. She seemed nervous all the time, probably wondering how she'd escaped being publicly named in the divorce drama. Maybe she thought she was just lucky. Sometimes she stayed late at work, too conveniently. I knew she was sneaking off with John during those extra hours. Though I felt nothing but betrayal, I masked it all. But Elaine sensed something was off. One evening, while I was preparing dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen. Ellie and James weren't home yet. "Dad," she asked carefully, "is everything okay with you and Mom? You're both acting so normal. Too normal. But she's always tense, and you two barely interact." She brought up Patsy's parents, noting how her friend was devastated. The divorce was final next week, and the house was about to be sold. Patsy had shared that her dad had been unfaithful for years and had 2 kids with another married woman. She asked, "Do you know who her dad is?" I looked at Elaine. Smart girl. Her instincts were sharp, too sharp. I kept my voice steady. "Relationships go through quiet patches, Lainey," I told her. "And if there's ever anything you need to know, I promise I'll tell you. Now, why don't you head up to your room?" She nodded and left, but I knew the time was coming when I'd have to tell her the truth. That the man she called Dad wasn't her biological father. A truth I dreaded sharing. Meanwhile, Shelley's divorce was about to be finalized. I knew this because we remained in close touch. Her lawyer had told her she was entitled to 80% of their shared assets. Financially, she'd be in a strong position to start fresh. It amazed me how far the process had gone without anyone revealing the identity of John's affair partner. That silence worked in my favor. It kept the spotlight off Ellie and gave me time to prepare my next move. Eventually, the day came. John and Shelley's divorce was finalized. Their house was sold, and Shelley moved to a nearby town where she found a new job and a home that suited her and Patsy's new life. Patsy adjusted over time, leaning heavily on Elaine for support. She visited often, especially for sleepovers, and though she tried to stay strong, she never stopped needing her mother. If Shelley wasn't home when she got back, Patsy would immediately call her to check in. Shelley and I kept in touch. Our occasional talks and mutual understanding gave both of us the strength to get through the betrayal we'd faced. Meanwhile, the man responsible for it all had lost his job, as expected. Eventually, he managed to land a part-time gig with a modest paycheck, far below what he'd been used to. Now it was my turn to act. That Wednesday, Ellie came home from work, ready to take her usual post-shift shower. Just as she was heading toward the bedroom, I stopped her. "I know about you and John," I said. She froze midway up the stairs, gripping the handrail like it was the only thing holding her up. Her face turned pale, and for a second I thought she might fall. Barely audible, she asked, "What are you talking about?" I didn't hold back. The anger I'd kept bottled up for months came flooding out. "I mean, I know you've been seeing John behind my back for years. You had 2 children with him and made me believe they were mine. You've lied to me for almost 2 decades. You betrayed our marriage and disrespected me in ways I can't even begin to describe." I told her I was aware of everything that had gone on for the past few months, where she went, what she did, and with whom. I said she'd be served with the divorce papers that night, precisely at 8 p.m., while Elaine and James would be home finishing the dinner I made for them. I explained that I wouldn't be around by then. My things were already packed and loaded into the car. I would never set foot in that house again. If she needed to contact me, she could speak to my lawyer. The number was in the documents. I added that it was now her responsibility to explain everything to James and Elaine. I'd hoped to be the one to talk to them, to tell them about her affair and what it meant. But I couldn't. If I had, I might have lost control, said things that would have left lasting scars. So I left it to her. She caused the damage. She could face the fallout. Ellie collapsed on the steps, mumbling, "No, no," like a broken record. I felt nothing for her. No pity, no regret. I turned back to the kitchen, finished setting the dinner table, and placed 2 envelopes, one for James, one for Elaine, where they normally sat. Inside each was the same letter. "Dear James and Lainey, I hate that you're caught in this situation. If there were a way for me to shield you from the pain, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. But I need you both to know something important. I love you, with every part of me. From the moment you were born, I've cared for you, raised you, laughed with you, cried with you. I've tried to help shape you into the incredible people you are today. If you ever want to talk to me, and I hope you do, this is my new number, 022-378-6712. Please don't give it to your mother. I can't have contact with her anymore. I hope whatever she tells you doesn't break your heart the way it shattered mine. With all my love, Dad." It had taken me a long time to reach this decision. Genetically, I wasn't their father. But emotionally, spiritually, I was. I'd been their father every day of their lives. That truth would never change. Tears welled in my eyes as I walked out of the kitchen, through the garage, and into the car. Ellie was still on the stairs, arms wrapped around her head. She looked like a ghost of herself. I didn't say a word as I passed. I just hoped she would finally do the right thing, be honest with our children. She owed them that much. I drove to the small house I'd rented a week earlier. It was simple, but there was room for Elaine and James if they ever chose to visit or stay. That decision, however, was theirs to make. Tears streamed down my face on the drive. My chest was tight. I feared I might crash from the flood of emotion, but I made it safely. When I reached the house and turned the key in the lock, a familiar voice surprised me. "I figured that you could use some company tonight." It was Shelley. Through everything, she had been my anchor. I collapsed into her arms, and we both broke down again, just like we had months ago. The emotions spilled out: grief, rage, disbelief, sorrow. Every part of me trembled as I released the weight I'd carried for so long. She held me tight, never letting go. I'm sure my messy, tearful ramblings must have seemed like incoherent noise to Shelley, but she didn't flinch. She gently led me inside, sat me on the couch, and wrapped her arms around me. I couldn't say much, just sat there, struggling to catch my breath. After what felt like hours, all I could whisper was, "Thanks, Shelley." She didn't let me say anything else. We simply moved forward. By 7 a.m., both of our phones erupted. Elaine was calling me and Patsy was calling Shelley. They had both been trying to reach us since the night before. I picked up. "Hey, Lainey, sweetheart." She didn't answer, only sobbed into the phone. I felt my heart sink. "I love you, Lainey," I said softly. "That won't ever change." Her crying calmed slightly. Then she spoke. "I love you too, Daddy. I don't know what to think about Mom. One minute I see the mother I've always loved, and the next I see someone I don't even recognize. Someone who's lied to everyone. I need to see you. I need to know we're okay. Where are you? Can we come to you now? James wants to come too." I reassured her that I'd be there soon to pick them up. I didn't mention it to her then, but Shelley and I had some tidying up to do before they arrived. Patsy, meanwhile, had also asked Shelley if she could come over, worried because she'd stayed up most of the night. Less than an hour later, I picked up Elaine and James from outside what used to be our home. They each had backpacks slung over their shoulders and pillows tucked under their arms. "Looks like you two are heading off to camp," I said, trying to lift the mood. Neither smiled. Their tired, red-rimmed eyes told me they hadn't slept. James glanced at the house behind him and said, "We can't stay there." Oddly enough, the house already felt foreign to me too, like it had never been ours. "Mom just cries nonstop," James added, "and she keeps talking to that bastard." It was the first time I'd heard James curse, but I didn't call him out for it. He had every right to be angry. "All right," I said, ushering them into the car. "Let's get you settled at my place. We need to talk." The ride over was heavy with silence. James stared blankly out the window, while Elaine cried quietly, going through tissues like pages in a book. When we arrived, they rushed inside as though they were desperate to feel safe again. Shelley and Patsy were already there waiting. Patsy ran to Elaine and hugged her tightly. "So I guess that makes us sisters now," she said, trying to smile. "I always wanted a sister. I just wish it didn't happen like this." That moment shattered whatever composure I had left. Tears filled my eyes again, and soon all three girls were crying. James stood stiff, trying to hold it in. I wrapped an arm around his shoulders and pulled him into me. "It's gonna be all right, son," I whispered. He nodded, trying to be strong, but his tears betrayed him. I hugged him tighter and, through my own choked voice, said, "You'll always be my boy, James. No matter what happens, I'm proud of you. I always will be." He cried harder and finally whispered, "Thanks, Dad." That moment broke me. I held him like I had when he was 5 and afraid of thunder. Shelley, ever intuitive, chose that second to speak up. "Well," she said, half laughing through tears, "now that the group crying is over, how about we eat like a proper family?" She served pizza and drinks, which gave us all a much-needed pause to breathe. Later, we spent the afternoon in the backyard, soaking in the sun in some kind of strange new peace. No one talked about the circumstances that brought us together, but laughter returned as we joked about our new, blended family. Shelley and I exchanged knowing glances from time to time. We both understood this new harmony didn't erase the truth, that biologically I wasn't James and Elaine's father, and she wasn't theirs either. But for now, those quiet looks were few, overtaken by something far more powerful: love, support, and relief. Evening came. Shelley and Patsy headed home, leaving me alone with my kids. "Did you tell your mom you're staying here?" I asked, mostly out of caution. I didn't want anyone thinking they'd gone missing. "Yeah," James replied. "We left her a note, told her not to call." His anger was palpable again. I knew if I didn't help him process it, it would fester. "I know this hurts," I began. "You both have every reason to be upset." There were moments when the pain almost broke me. I won't lie, I thought about giving up. But the one thing that kept me from going over the edge was you two. I looked them in the eyes, making sure they were listening. "What your mother did, she did to me. I was the one she betrayed. But she's still your mother. And when this pain fades, because it will, you'll remember the love, the care, the good times. That woman raised you with everything she had. Don't let anger steal away the rest of your life with her." Elaine nodded slowly, eyes wet again. "Can I still call you Daddy?" she asked. "I'm just so angry at what she did to you. I feel your pain just as much as my own." "Of course you can," I said, smiling despite the ache in my chest. "I may not be your biological father, but I'm your dad. That hasn't changed, and it never will. I'll always be here. We'll get through this together." Then, trying to lighten the mood, I added with a grin, "Things might not be as fancy here as they were at the old house, but hey, you still get to pick your room." I paused for a second, thinking to myself how surreal this all was. Then, with a mock-serious tone, I said, "All right, enough heavy talk for one night. Go pick a room. Make it yours. This is your home now. I love you both. Always." After a whirlwind of emotions, the house finally quieted down for the night. Elaine and James had settled in, and I knew I needed to rest too. The past few days had drained me mentally and physically. I wasn't a young man anymore, and my time with Shelley the previous night had pushed me to the brink of exhaustion. I remember wondering how she was holding up. That was the last thought I had before my head hit the pillow and I drifted into a dreamless sleep. The next morning, over a quiet breakfast, I encouraged Elaine and James to speak with their mother. Ellie had been trying to reach out, clearly rattled by their absence. After some tense discussion, the kids reluctantly agreed to return home, on one condition: John had to stay out of the picture. They made it clear they didn't want anything to do with him. Ellie agreed, though whether John actually stayed away was anyone's guess. I drove them back just before lunch, scanning the neighborhood for any unfamiliar cars. Luckily, the mechanic and I had ended our little arrangement, so Ellie had her vehicle back and wouldn't need any more rides. Before they went inside, I pulled them into a long emotional hug and reminded them they could call me any time. They knew how to reach me. As they walked toward the front door, Ellie appeared, clearly waiting. "Al, we need to—" I didn't let her finish. I shut the car window and pulled away without another word. There was no way I was ready to engage with her. Not yet. Eventually, I knew I'd have to, for the kids' sake. But not today. Later that week, I met with my lawyer again. Jane didn't sugarcoat anything. "Al," she began, "as much as it hurts, John has legal rights. He's their biological father. Elaine is an adult now. She's free to live wherever she chooses. But James is only 14. That means he legally needs a guardian for the next couple of years. Unless you and Ellie agree on shared custody, she has the final say. And since John's recognized as his father on paper, you have no claim. Like it or not, you're a legal stranger." I'd known most of this already, but hearing it spelled out made everything heavier. Jane added, "Let's finalize the divorce first. After that, we'll see what options remain." The divorce went through. Surprisingly, I received 40% of the shared assets. Jane had expected less, but I wasn't going to complain. Elaine chose to move in with me permanently, though she occasionally visited her mother. Things between her and Ellie were tense, but civil, an uneasy peace. I was happy to have her with me, but the injustice of it all still stung. Ellie and John continued living together in the old house, now with James. When Elaine visited, John conveniently disappeared. He knew better than to be around her. Somehow, he had managed to purchase a high-end apartment elsewhere, where he stayed when not with Ellie. Elaine later told me that James had completely shut down. He spent most of his time holed up in his room, barely acknowledged Ellie, and didn't speak to John at all. He was polite enough to answer Ellie with one-word replies, but that was the extent of it. With John, there was only silence. He was clearly spiraling, emotional walls going up, behavior slipping. One afternoon, Elaine sat me down and shared her concern. "Dad, I'm seriously worried about James," she said. "He's shutting everyone out. He's falling in with the wrong crowd at school, skipping assignments, even clashing with teachers. My friends there say he's barely passing now. He's not okay." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "I've tried, Lainey, but the system's not on our side. Legally, I'm not his parent. I can't step in the way I want to." Then I gave her a look, one she recognized, the kind of look that said, "I have a plan." "Just know," I added, "I'm not done yet. John's going to regret a lot more than just cheating." Elaine raised an eyebrow. I leaned in and told her what I'd learned. I'd hired a private investigator. Not cheap, but worth every penny. And the guy had uncovered a bombshell. Apparently, when John divorced Shelley, he'd hidden major financial assets. He'd stashed away hundreds of thousands in an offshore account, completely undisclosed during the legal proceedings. No wonder he could afford a fancy apartment post-divorce while pretending to be broke. The PI couldn't trace the full origin of the money, but found that the account had been opened with a mysterious $200,000 transfer, supposedly from a distant relative. The account had since grown to nearly $1 million. "And Ellie?" I muttered. "She probably doesn't even know. He's screwing her over too." Shelley's court settlement hadn't touched this hidden stash, and I doubted Ellie knew anything about it either, especially since John had managed to maintain the rented hideout for so long with no financial issues. Even more interesting, the account had been registered under an alias, James Long. Classic. The man couldn't even come up with a clever fake name. The PI found that John likely accessed the account from his home devices, computer or smartphone, but had never physically visited an overseas bank. He had a local safety deposit box, but barely used it. Everything he did was online, under the radar. Things were getting juicy, and the more I learned, the more determined I became to make sure that John finally paid, not just emotionally, but legally, and financially too. Elaine was completely on board, maybe even more fired up than I was. She had a mission: expose John and hit him where it hurt. Her visits to Ellie's place became more frequent, which made things difficult for him. Every time he left, he had to lug his laptop and private files with him. Eventually, laziness got the better of him, and one day he left his laptop behind. That was our moment. Elaine called, breathless with urgency. Dad, he's out. His laptop's still here. I don't know the password. I don't know anything. What do I do? I'll be there in 15, I said. Just make sure your mom doesn't see you leave. If she finds out, that jerk will be back before we can blink. Elaine told Ellie she was heading to her room and needed a few hours of privacy. That gave us the window we needed. She met me 1 block from their place. I drove directly to a location I had prepared weeks earlier. I didn't know the person, but I'd reached out to him online and arranged a meeting for precisely this kind of job. I knocked. The door creaked open, revealing a skinny, acne-ridden guy in his early 20s, eyes bleary, wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too big. "What do you want, old man?" he mumbled. I ignored the jab. "The name's Al. We spoke. You said you could unlock this laptop?" He gave us a skeptical look, but stepped aside after noticing Elaine behind me. "All right, bring it in," he said reluctantly. I handed him the laptop and asked, "So, can you do this or were you just talking crap online?" "Chill out," he muttered, already plugging in a tangle of USBs and HDMI cables. "Give me an hour. It'll be open like a diary." The guy got to work while humming some tune under his breath. Elaine and I stood awkwardly in the chaos he called an apartment, an electronics graveyard with pizza boxes, loose wires, and unwashed laundry everywhere. The only organized space was the oversized monitor displaying the laptop's login screen and a wall of rapidly scrolling code. After about 40 minutes of keyboard clicks and muttered code fragments, the hacker snapped his fingers. "We're in." The desktop booted up, revealing John's main account. We immediately checked his browser bookmarks, clicking through a few nested folders until we spotted it. Bank of Greece. Bingo. The login page opened, and the kid got back to work, bypassing the security step by step. Another 50 minutes passed, and finally, the login autofilled. Username and password both cracked. Within seconds, we had access to John's offshore account. The balance? A staggering $900,000 and some change. I transferred every last dollar, except for $10, into an account already set up under the name K. Hader. Let him scratch his head over that one. Before closing everything down, we also uncovered the details of his local safe deposit box. I noted everything down and paid the hacker, who, despite the mess, had delivered exactly what I needed. Time was tight, so we packed up fast. Elaine brought the laptop back and placed it exactly where he left it. Then she casually told Ellie she was heading out again. We waited around the corner and weren't surprised to see John return just minutes after Elaine had left. "He must have been circling the block," I muttered. Creepy bastard. Back at my place, I couldn't stop thinking about the money. This wasn't just a slush fund. John was a regular accountant, not some high-powered executive. How did he hide nearly $1 million in a foreign bank account while pretending to live modestly in the suburbs? He had to be hiding it from someone, or several someones. And with modern banking laws and international cooperation on financial transparency, it wouldn't be long before tax authorities uncovered it too. If my PI could track it down this easily, so could the feds. Maybe there was more hidden away. Maybe the safe deposit box had answers. With my teaching job keeping me occupied, I couldn't go investigate myself. But Elaine volunteered. She had all the passwords we'd cracked and was determined to help finish this. If I had shown up at that bank, the staff would have probably interrogated me into oblivion. But Elaine, nearly 20, beautiful, confident, and cunning. She knew exactly how to present herself. Part of me ached at the thought of how quickly she'd been forced to grow up, but I couldn't help but admire her strength. She dressed for success, or rather for persuasion. When she reached the bank in the town where the deposit box was located, she spun a story about her stepfather being hospitalized and needing to access important documents. The combination of her charm, story, and verified passwords got her past the front desk. When the box was finally opened, inside she found a handful of ledgers and an envelope filled with miscellaneous small items. Not wanting to risk suspicion, she tucked everything into her purse and exited quickly. As she walked out, she paused just slightly at the entrance, pretending to double-check her bag. She leaned forward just enough to draw the security guard's attention, and his gaze. He'd remember her for the rest of the day, though probably not for the right reasons. Elaine had played the part perfectly. She had the files, the evidence, and the resolve. John wouldn't know what hit him. When I got home from work that afternoon, the contents of the safe deposit box were already spread across the kitchen table. Elaine sat there pale, her expression a mix of fear and disbelief. "Dad, you're not going to believe what I found," she said, her voice tight. She handed me 2 passports. The first bore John's photo but was issued under the name Bruce Williams, an Australian passport. The second had Ellie's face staring back at me, but under the name Anne Williams. Mrs. Anne Williams, also Australian. What the hell? I muttered under my breath, then caught myself, remembering Elaine was right in front of me. Looks like he was planning an escape, I said. He was probably planning to vanish overseas with your mother. The divorce might have thrown a wrench in the timeline. Look at this. 2 one-way Qantas tickets from LA to Sydney, booked weeks in advance. Thankfully, she never got on that flight. Say what you will about Ellie, but I don't think she'd abandon you or James. Still, something about this stinks. Elaine didn't respond right away. Instead, she kept rifling through the stack of documents, pausing to pull out an old photo. Dad, check this out. It's him, but he looks younger, like your age when you were in college. I took the photo and nearly dropped it. There he was, John, back when we were all students. He looked confident, slick, like he always knew something the rest of us didn't, and beside him stood someone I hadn't thought about in decades. No way, I said, my throat tightening. That's Jimmy Lamont. Elaine looked at me, confused. Jimmy was the son of Al Lamont, I explained. Infamous crime boss. That whole family was toxic. Jimmy walked around campus like he owned the place, threw money at people, intimidated women. Nobody liked him. And apparently, John was tight with him. Can't believe I never saw it back then. And I sure as hell didn't know your mother had any kind of connection with him. I was clueless. Elaine silently passed me the 2 journals from the box. At first glance, they looked like boring accounting ledgers. But flipping through them revealed a different story. Systematic deposits and withdrawals into an account under the name J. Lamont. Looks like our friend was running the books for Al's crew, I muttered. The second journal was even more suspicious. It had only deposits, regular payments, and one major recent withdrawal labeled apartment. The account name? James Long. The very same one we'd emptied the night before. Either John had been managing money for the Lamont family, or he was quietly skimming off the top. Either way, it was starting to come together. Elaine, we've stumbled into something way bigger than we thought. We're not just dealing with fraud anymore. This is organized crime. And if they find out we've been snooping, especially if they figure out we're the ones who hit that account, it won't end well. Elaine's face went white again. Do you think they know it was us? I didn't have a good answer. I hope not, but we can't take any chances. I quickly took the documents to my school and had the assistant scan and copy everything, both journals and the fake passports. Elaine returned the originals to the safe deposit box, except for Ellie's false passport and the flight tickets. I kept those. Later, we sat down to talk. We both knew the truth. Ellie might be in serious danger. If Al Lamont discovered John had stolen from him, retribution would come fast, and without mercy. Ellie, by association, might be collateral damage. She needs to get away from him, I said. Now. Elaine nodded. I hate what she's done, but I don't want her to die. That was enough. We had to act fast. We decided to anonymously deliver a copy of the journals to Al Lamont's known address. Let the mob handle John. Meanwhile, we needed Ellie to disappear under a new identity. The only question was how to convince her. I called her. She didn't answer. No surprise there. She probably assumed I was still freezing her out, which I had been. Eventually, she picked up. Alan, she said, cautious. This is unexpected. We need to talk, I cut in. It's about James. Meet me at Bean's Coffee in 15. No questions. Just come. I ended the call before she could ask anything else. When she walked into the cafe, she looked nervous and confused. What's going on? What happened to James? Is he okay? She asked, panicked. I didn't answer. Instead, I gestured for her to sit. Calmly, I pulled the fake passport from my coat and slid it across the table. She stared at it for a second, confused, then picked it up and gasped. Her photo was staring back at her next to the name Anne Williams. What the hell is this? She demanded. Where did this come from? This isn't mine. What are you doing with it? I remained silent as she fired off questions. Then, without a word, I placed the 2 plane tickets beside the passport. The color drained from her face. She didn't speak, just stared at the documents, her lips parted but no sound coming out. Her shock seemed genuine, and that told me all I needed to know. She hadn't known about the plan. She might have made mistakes, but whatever John had cooked up behind the scenes, she wasn't in on it. Still, none of this erased the past. But now the stakes were far greater than heartbreak. Her life might very well depend on what we did next. Looks like your boyfriend was planning a clean break, with you and the kids out of the picture. Mrs. Williams. Ellie's face lost what little color it had left. What are you talking about? Alan, I would never leave my kids. I know things have been hard since the divorce, but I still love them. They're John's kids, too. He wouldn't just... She caught herself. That last word stuck in her throat. And just like that, for the first time, she openly admitted it. The children weren't mine. My fists clenched. Are you seriously defending him? My voice rose. The lying scumbag who helped you humiliate me for 19 years? You're going to stand there and act like he has some kind of moral compass now? I could feel the heat rising in my chest. People around the cafe were beginning to stare. Ellie looked rattled. She'd never seen me lose control like that. I'm done here, she said, standing up abruptly. I reached into my bag and dropped a manila folder onto the table. She paused. What's that? Counterfeit documents, I replied. Take a good look. Ellie's eyes scanned the forged IDs and financial records. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. She knew our finances like the back of her hand. She understood instantly what she was looking at. Ellie, I said, lowering my voice. He played you too. That bastard's been skimming off the Lamonts for who knows how long. You were just a tool. From where I sit, that's some twisted justice. But it doesn't make this any easier. I leaned in slightly, my voice now cold and direct. John's not just a cheater. He's been robbing a crime syndicate. If Al Lamont or any of his people get wind of that, and they will, you won't just be in danger. You'll be marked. Best case, you wind up trafficked in some underground brothel. Worst case, your remains get buried in the Sonoran Desert. She looked like she might faint. One of the waitresses came over, concerned. Ma'am, are you okay? Can I get you anything? Ellie didn't answer. The waitress gave me a wary glance and backed away. I'm not here to scare you, Ellie, I said more evenly. But you need to vanish. Go to Australia, use the passport, use the plane ticket, go dark, right now. The bile in my throat burned as I forced myself to say the next part. But first, there are conditions. I pulled out another envelope, heavier this time. Legal documents. You're going to sign over full custody of James to me. The house? That goes into a trust for James and Elaine. Everything else? You walk away, you disappear. I'm handing you a lifeline, not because I care about you. You don't deserve that. But because our kids need their mother alive. Her eyes widened, shocked by the shift in tone. Alan, I cut her off. I do have feelings for you, I said. She blinked. Hatred, Ellie. Disgust. You took everything I gave you, love, loyalty, family, and you spit on it. You treated me like a fool. But I'm doing this for James and Elaine. They deserve to grow up with at least one parent not found face down in a ditch. I tapped the folder in front of her. Sign, now. This is your only chance. Tears slipped down her face as she signed. Alan, this gives up all my rights to my children. I stood up, grabbed the papers, and looked down at her. Welcome to my world. That's exactly how I felt the moment I learned the truth about you. I walked out without another word. The entire cafe exhaled as I left, heads turning back toward the woman still quietly sobbing at the table. The next day, James arrived at my house, dragging a suitcase and a backpack behind him. Hey, Dad, he said. Mom left a note saying I'd be staying with you. A lot of her stuff's gone, too. Is she not coming back? I smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. You're home now, son. We'll talk more later. Go get settled. Elaine rushed to greet him, wrapping him in a tight hug before helping him unpack. 2 days later, the headlines hit. Local accountant John Jefferson had vanished without a trace. The article hinted at ties to organized crime. No arrests yet, but the authorities were investigating. On the next page, a separate report about a suspicious fire. Address: our old house. Police believed it was a break-in gone wrong. The place had been completely ransacked before being set ablaze. James and Elaine stayed with me full-time after that. Elaine eventually headed off to university. Ironically, the same one her half-sister Patsy attended. Shelley, after selling her own place, moved in with us. Our patched-together family began to heal. James found his rhythm again. He'd spend nights with headphones on, lost in his favorite music. We gave him space, but he knew we were always close. The money we'd recovered from John's secret account stayed exactly where it was, in our offshore fund, untouched. Teachers don't make much, after all. But that account was our safety net, and just knowing it was there gave us peace. The past had burned to the ground, but from the ashes we started something new, something real.